I finally managed to hit Immortal thanks to Offlane Death Prophet. I'm not the best player in the world, but I've gained almost 1500 MMR in the last year on this hero, so I decided to make this video both to explain the straightforward choices on the hero, such as item builds, facets, and talents, as well as the conceptual strategies for the hero, such as how to push and when to fight. I think Death Prophet is good in most games, but there are some heroes that she really doesn't like to play against. The biggest counter to DP is probably Ancient Apparition, because taking away her ability to heal makes it really hard to play the game. For the same reason, items like Shiva's Guard, Eye of Scotty, and Spirit Vessel are very good against Death Prophet. In general, she doesn't like playing against heroes with high mobility that can break her Siphon, but thanks to her silence, she can still beat heroes like Slark and Anti-Mage in lane. Also, playing into high mobility heroes is a lot easier now than it used to be, since she gets passive movement speed from her innate instead of having to wait until she hits level 6 and leveling up her ult to get that bonus movement speed. Personally, I really like to play DP into teams that rely heavily on physical damage, as a Shiva's Rush tends to feel really good in these games. Death Prophet is also such a strong laner that she can generally kick almost any melee carry out of the lane at a pretty early level, unless their team manages to bail them out with rotations. My favorite facet in general is Morning Ritual, and I will generally choose this facet unless I have a good reason not to. One of the worst things that can happen when playing DP is you pop your ult in a team fight and then get immediately focused and killed. Morning Ritual delays up to 45% of the damage for several seconds, often buying you enough time to BKB, euls, or get bailed out by your team. Euls is a very good item on DP regardless of your facet, but it gains a ton of value with Morning Ritual since you can actually avoid 60% of the delayed damage with proper timing, and I'll show you all how to do that later in the video. You usually want to put your first point in Crypt Swarm to secure the range creep, and then your next 2 points in Spirit Siphon for sustain. Play safe in lane until level 3, because then when you have your Siphon to level 2, you can trade a lot more effectively. I usually max Siphon first, and I'll actually skip Silence until level 8 or 9, unless I'm against someone where I really need the silence, like a AM or a Puck or something. But you can see here just how valuable the heal can be. It's hard to make sweeping generalizations about what you should or shouldn't do in the laning stage due to the complexity of Dota, but in general your goal in the lane is to kick out the enemy and break their tower. If you win your lane, you should hit 6 before the enemy, and then you can use your ult to either dive them and kill them or take their tower. If nobody rotates, you usually should get a kill or a tower. However, if you are able to force an early rotation from the enemy mid, it's a huge win for your mid laner. And if you're able to force the enemy 4 to rotate, then your carry's going to free farm, right? Either way, if you can pull enemies to your lane, it's generally going to be a win for your team. So you see, I popped my Exo here, I didn't get the tower and I died, but my Sven's free farming this whole time, and so is my Lesh mid. And really, they're just kind of wasting time down here, you see, chase around my bat. Yeah, so you can see the Lesh is just pulling further and further ahead of mid, and the CK actually was behind Weaver until just now, and this just gave him a chance to catch up. You should always think about how you want to play the game, and then buy items that help you to do that. So for example, if you're against a Faceless Void and you want to be able to frontline without him killing you in his chrono, you need to buy items like Shiva's Guard for armor and Octarine for health, right? Instead, if maybe you want to tower dive and chase people down, maybe you get the euls first for the extra move speed, and so that you can cancel their teleport. I almost always buy an early Shivas against lineups with a lot of physical damage. Not only does it give you a lot of armor, a slow, and healing reduction, but it doubles as an excellent farming tool. And while granted, Death Prophet already farms pretty fast with Crypt Swarm, the combination of Shivas plus Crypt Swarm one-shots creep waves, so you can take really aggressive farm quickly and then retreat. It also helps you farm stacks and double farm jungle camps, both by increasing your damage from your Crypt Swarm, but also by slowing the creep so it's easier to group them and maximize the damage from your Crypt Swarm. Euls is a great item for DP because not only does she like the move speed, mana regen, and the ability to cancel TPs, but you can use this while you're siphoning enemies to heal back up in a fight. You get even more value out of the Euls when you have the Morning Ritual facet, as you're able to dodge the delayed damage ticks by using it. Since Euls lasts 2.5 seconds and the Morning Ritual delayed damage triggers every second, You might want to practice timing your euls so that you use it just before the tick of damage hits. So I'll show you that here. This way you're actually able to dodge 3 instances of damage instead of just 2. The upgrade to Wind Waker is also excellent, but it's very expensive, so this tends to be a pretty late upgrade. Octarine is another great item on Death Prophet for a few reasons. The main reason is just the cooldown reduction is super busted. I mean, Death Prophet has 4 active abilities, so it benefits all of them. Plus the 500 health is actually a big deal because most of the other items that Death Prophet builds don't generally have health on them. Now I'll give some example item builds and the situations that I'd purchase them in. So this first build is probably the one that I've had the most success with. I'll generally build something like this unless the enemy team has a lot of magic damage that I'm worried about. You can still do a similar build if they have a lot of magic damage. You're just going to want to pick up like an early shroud or pipe. Maybe even pick up a casual hood here before the shivas. The goal is to get the shivas as fast as possible so that you can use it to farm faster and take over the enemy jungle. If you have a really good game, it might be worth picking up the Kaya and Sanj, as this is kind of like a snowball item. You know, if you're having a good game, it makes a good game better, but I wouldn't really pick this up if I'm not having a really good game. Like if I'm not already ahead, I wouldn't buy this. And then next, you know, you would really like to buy the Octarine most games if you can, like as early as possible. But often you're going to need to build the BKB before the Octarine, and that really just depends who you're playing against and, you know, if you're getting bursted or not. And then I always like Scythe of Vice as a super late game item. I think this item just gives you way too much value late in the game, and often you can just kill key heroes within the duration of the sheep. Other situational item choices, depending on the game, could be like a Blink Dagger if you need to get on top of a sniper or something, or maybe a Lotus Orb if you need to purge Treant Ult or something like that. It really just depends on the situation. So I'll build more like this second build if I'm worried about getting bursted by the enemy team, or if my allies get a lot of value out of these auras. I found this build to be more consistent in impact than the first build, which is more feast or famine. This is probably a good build to start with if you're new to the hero and want to try it in the offlane for a few games, because this plays more like a traditional offlaner where you're trying to carry around your auras and follow your team around, as opposed to making plays on the map on your own. So build 3 is the right-clicking build, and this isn't really a new Death Prophet build, but it's much more viable now than it used to be, now that Death Prophet gets the plus 40 attack speed for her level 10 talent. I think in the past it was kind of a meme, but it's actually, in the right game, this can be a pretty potent build now, and I'll actually show you a clip of that. This build is nice because you do really solid damage in fights and against structures even without your ult, so you're much less cooldown reliant than other builds, but it really requires your team having some sort of a reliable initiation or frontliner other than you, which you often don't if you're the offlaner. So that being said, this build is it can be very strong, but it can also get shut down. It's very feast or famine, kind of like the first build. So you really want to make sure that it's a good game for it before you commit to it, because it feels much better with the treads than the arcanes, so you need to make that decision early. And again, these are just example item builds, and I would caution from following them to a T. In most games, the optimal item build will involve some deviation from one of these builds, but the only way you're going to know which item is correct and when is through experience and practice. Death Prophet Shard is very strong, and you often want to pick it up early, especially if you're against a hero like Troll Warlord or Ursa, who really wants to be able to stay on top of you. If your ult is off cooldown, see if there's an objective that you can pressure on the map. I like to pop my ult and try and pressure towers when I see skirmishes going on the other side of the map, to force the enemy to choose to either commit to the skirmish or to stop my push. Often what happens is that a single hero will TP and try and stop me, and you can just dive them and kill them. But see, the idea is by waiting for a skirmish to go on elsewhere, you have more information, and you reduce the risk of getting surprised by multiple enemy heroes just showing up and killing you as soon as you pop your ult, and then rendering you useless for the next 2 minutes, which is pretty much the worst thing that can happen as DP. And you see, so like 3 people TP'd in here, but my ult wore off at like the perfect time to save me. And these guys don't know it, but they're actually all just about to die because they can't kill me here. So. often enemies will underestimate how much damage you can do because they're just not used to playing against an offlane Death Prophet. This Luna isn't allowed to lane anymore once I hit 6, but he doesn't know that. You know, so as soon as he shows up and goes for that rune, I'm just going to pop ult and kill him. And BM him, of course, with the high 5. Death Prophet's one of the best tower divers in the game thanks to Spirit Siphon. You can often dive the enemy carry 1v1 at level 6 and solo kill them if nobody rotates. The most important thing to pay attention to when you're tower diving as Death Prophet is how many Spirit Siphon charges you have. You don't necessarily need all 4, but ideally you're going to have at least a couple in case someone managed to break one of your siphons, then you still got like a backup. Or in this case, I have like 2 more heroes show up, so I need the siphon charges for Tiny. And because I started with 4 siphon charges, I'm actually able to dive a second time and get this kill as well. Whereas if I started this play with only 1 charge, there's no way I would have got that kill on Tiny or this kill on Bounty Hunter. So here's another clip that just shows how potent Death Prophet is at level 6, and this is really showing off the Spirit Collector talent, because you can see this talent really does do an absurd amount of damage when you're allowed to just hit people with your spirits. I'm even going to be able to dive the Ursa here. Yeah, pretty sick. Another important tip for Death Prophet is that your ult actually does more damage as you get closer to the enemy because your spirits don't have to travel as far. And when you get right on top of them, that's maybe not necessarily true because you see they get kind of crazy here. But in general, you want to be as close to your enemy as possible to maximize the damage of your spirit.